Hello everyone, I'm Phawx, and today we're reviewing the PowKiddy RGB30. I've often avoided the PowKiddy types of devices on my channel. Some of the units I've reviewed in the past sparked my interest that were novel in design and price, and the RGB30 fits in that category. This is an intriguing retro handheld device sparking discussions in the handheld gaming community. Thank you very much to LitNXT for sending this review sample to me. If you're interested in this device, there is a coupon code that was provided to me, and it's in the link below. We're going to dive into the RGB30, exploring its technical specs, unique features, user experience, and overall performance, to see if this high-resolution square aspect ratio stands out in the world of handheld gaming consoles. The PowKiddy RGB30 is powered by a quad-core ARM Cortex A55 chip running at 1.8 GHz, located on the Rockchip 3566 SoC, a popular choice in previous generation handhelds. Since we are seeing a resurgence of this chip, it should be noted that there will be a number of emulators that are outside of the capabilities, but generally speaking, Dreamcast is going to be the highest end part of the spectrum where it comes to what this handheld is capable of emulating. It's paired with 1 GB of LPDDR4 RAM, which is suitable enough for the JELOS or Just Enough Linux operating system that is running the system. The star of the show, obviously, is the 4-inch 720 by 720 resolution display. This square screen is a unique feature in the realm of handheld consoles, offering an unconventional but effective display for retro gaming. The device supports dual microSD card slots, effectively separating system and game storage for easier management and upgrades. Connectivity is versatile with built-in Wi-Fi 5G and Bluetooth, complemented by a suite of interfaces including a Type-C fast charging port, a mini HDMI interface, and an on-the-go USB interface, as well as a 3.5mm audio jack. The RGB30 remains mostly compact and portable, but its square display makes it a bit problematic for most pockets. A 4100 mAh battery does actually reach up to 8 hours of gameplay with a reasonable charging time of around 2 hours. The battery test I did does show the system crashing at the 3-hour mark, but does continue to run in that crash state for another 5 hours afterward. Now that we have a better understanding of the specs, let's take a brief tour in looking at what these specs physically mean on the device itself.
All right, let's start getting into the build quality section of this review for the RGB30. A cursory glance would reveal that this would look to be a very generic Anbernic device, something that a lot of people would have seen already countless times, especially because this is reusing a chip that a lot of people are familiar with. It's not going to break any performance barriers that we're used to. This is using the Rockchip 3566, which we've already seen multiple times, but it does feature that inline trigger design that Anbernic has done a bunch of times with a nondescript back. We're going to open this up and take a cursory glance at the back of this in just a moment, but again, I think one of the things that is largely going to be bringing a lot of people to be intrigued to this device is this very large 720 by 720 1:1 aspect ratio on this display, where there are going to be a few games that look really good on this display. When we think about how this device actually fits in the hand, it is quite comfortable, but because of the 1:1 4-inch aspect ratio, it creates a device whose dimensions are a little unwieldy. This is not something that is going to fit as nicely as something like another Anbernic device that you would have that has a bit of a wider display, something that is a little bit longer in candy bar design, much like a phone is. This is going to be something that fits in a pocket a little bit better, even though it has exposed analog sticks, much like the RGB30 has. However, it's more of a brick-like shape, so this is going to be something that's firmly going to be fitting in your back pocket, if it's going to go in your pocket at all, or you might just be putting this into your bag. All right, let's start talking about the inputs on the device itself. We're going to first start talking about the D-pad. For what it's worth, the D-pad is reasonably good. However, for my taste, it is a little bit loose. We are looking at a membrane-based D-pad here, so there is a surface that we're pressing on that will then relay to a contact on the PCB itself, as opposed to pressing directly on a particular contact. Those are what we would call dome-based D-pads, and this one is using an interface to then depress on something else. For what it's worth, the D-pad is relatively loose insofar as how I got it. When I was pressing in any given direction, I would have misinterpreted presses on any other adjacent press. So if I was pressing up, depending on how I was pressing up, sometimes it would give a left or right as well. So I'd go diagonal when I'd never really wanted that. So that's one thing that I would describe, that the D-pad is relatively okay, but there is some loose behavior to it. So overall, I would give it a B ranking. Now, the analog sticks that are present here are, again, something that has been on a lot of these devices. And I wouldn't say that they are bad in any particular degree, but I also wouldn't think that any of the games that you're going to be playing on this device, especially with this aspect ratio, that you're going to be leveraging any games that are going to be really looking to use the analog sticks all that much. The biggest part that you're going to be using these analog sticks is going to be with Nintendo DS emulation, where you're going to be using the analog sticks to use the virtual stylus to write on the screen and then pressing down. For what it's worth, most of the fidelity that you're going to get out of the analog sticks is fine, and you can use it for other types of games, so if you wanted to use it, you can use it, even though I think this is going to be largely a D-pad dominant emulation device. The face buttons themselves are also really good themselves. Now, I'm not really that harsh on face buttons themselves. These are membrane based, so you can actually hear it right here. The tactility is good, the depression is good, there is no mushy feeling whatsoever to them, so overall it is what you would expect out of face buttons. The other part we're going to mention here are the front firing speakers. Now that's something that I overall like over downward firing or upward firing, just because directionality kind of matters more than anything else for me. And if we just blast this out, the speakers are exceptionally loud on this device, and even when they get very loud, there is no clear distortion out of them. So overall, the audio quality is more than fine for what you're looking for out of this device. Topping it off with is a select and start button that are placed in a specific position that I overall find to be the best spot for them. On the bottom, we have our USB charging port as well as the USB on-the-go port. This is a port that you can plug into to extend other USB devices. The system itself would then enumerate any type of device that you're connecting to it here. Along the bottom, you're also going to see TFOS. This is the micro SD card that is going to be running your OS, and then this is where all the games are going to be stored, and those are listed in a specific order. The one thing that I will say that the RGB30 does better than any Anbernic device has ever is that the included ROMs that are in the game make a whole lot more sense than what you're going to be getting from Anbernic. Anbernic typically has like these things that are like 001, 002, whereas this is listed in an alphabetical order and something that is far more useful to the person that is going to be getting it than otherwise. Meaning that if you're going to be buying the RGB30 with a SD card that includes the ROM set, that the ROM set is not going to be some haphazard dash of a weird mix of games that are in numbered format as well as alphabetical, and a weird mix here and there. There are some games here that will be not US based, which is unfortunate, so you will have a mix of games that will just randomly be in another language, so that is one thing that I would knock on there if that's something that you actually cared about because you couldn't get ROMs yourself. Along the top, we have our inline trigger buttons, and this is something that I have routinely said that I'm never a fan of. I just never understand which is going to be which. Typically, when you're looking at these types of triggers for the Super Nintendo purpose, hitting R1 and L1 is simple enough and something that you would expect, but the triggers are going to be something that I never get to wrap my head around. So in a DualShock type of game for PlayStation type of stuff, that's where things get tripped up for me a little bit. Here we have our reset button, we have our power button, and then the volume up and down, as well as mini HDMI out. Alright, so that's a quick overview on the build quality, on what to expect out of it. Let's go ahead and open this up and see what's underneath. Alright, so here is the inside of the RGB30 itself. On the back we have our battery. It's rated at 4100 milliamp hour or rated for 15.5 watt hour. Generally speaking, that's the most important metric for me when I'm looking at this. The interesting bit here is that the speakers themselves are mounted to the back plate itself. So you can see on the back plate right here, that's where the speakers are adhered to, and when you close it, that's where the front panel here is where they're coming out, that sound. So the speakers themselves are relatively large for what's going on here. Probably why the speakers themselves sound so nice is how much space these speakers are allowed to take up. And then they connect over here to this part. So you're not going to be able to fully open this up. I had to disconnect them to open this up a little bit more. Over here you can see this is our single antenna pole for the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth itself. And that is just simply extended out to the plastic. So there's not going to be anything blocking for that. So that's where your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth is going to be radiating outward from, and where your connection is going to be largely going to be coming from. You can see the Wi-Fi chip and Bluetooth right here. Here are the analog sticks. Here are the two micro SD slots where you're going to be getting it. This is the display connector, which is getting flipped over to the display on the other side. Here we have our Rockchip 3566. Let's see if we can get a better picture of that for you. So that is our main APU that drives everything on the system, and then our 1 gig of RAM for the system to run. This is more than enough for JELOS, or just enough Linux OS to run on there, which why it's fine. And we also have another Rockchip over here. What is this? All right, putting a little bit more light onto the situation, we can see it's a Rockchip RK817-5. So we can kind of look that up and see what that actually is doing. All right, zoom back out. And that is pretty much what's going on with the RGB30. Let's get on to the rest of this review.
That square LCD at 720 by 720 resolution is a bold design choice, providing a fresh perspective for vertical screen games, especially classic arcade titles, without having to rotate the handheld. Or even older handheld systems like the Atari Lynx or original Game Boy, which have somewhat close to a square aspect ratio themselves. That high resolution enhances the gaming experience beyond its unique aesthetic appeal. The display quality, characterized by sharp resolution and vibrant colors, brings classic games to life in a way that feels greater than the classic counterparts could ever accomplish. Running on JELOS, the RGB30 offers a versatile and customizable environment, from offering ways to sync your save states with a variety of methods, or connecting to Moonlight streaming services, or even having a fast way to connect to a VPN. Most of these features are instantly available in the main interface. There are also easy tools to instantly scrape for game box art using a variety of web services. Overall, the interface is a bit clunky in a way that clearly feels like a skin on top of several scripts that run in the background, but they get the job done nonetheless. On top of that, you can easily update to the latest supported version of JELOS directly on the device itself, so making sure you're on the latest version is as easy as it can get. While I have been able to have the system crash when running a game, it did take nearly 2.5 hours for that crash to occur, and that was the only time I've seen the system crash ever during my use. The PowKiddy RGB30 is a fascinating Frankenstein. Its unique square screen paired with the reincarnated Rockchip 3566 offers solid enough performance for the target platforms that this needs to run, as well as a user-friendly design. It's positioned as a compelling option in the handheld gaming market, and while it may not cater to every gamer's needs, if you wanted this screen, this is the option for you. I find it difficult to give this device a complete endorsement, but the price is fine for what's on offer here. I hope this review was informative. As always, guys, thank you for your time, and thanks for watching.